Hello, and welcome to Agriland's Dairy Podcast, The Dairy Trail. I'm Hugh Harney, Technical Dairy Specialist for Agriland, and I'll be going out to different farms across the country to see what's going on the farm each week. We are talking spring calving, grazing, dietary requirements, nutrient application, and much more. In this week's episode, I took a trip to Derrinturn, County Kildare, where dairy farmer Brian Rushe is in the thick of the calving season. We talked to him about how he manages calving down 380 cows this spring and how he splits the cows into two herds. So we're out here in a dairy farm in Derrinturn, County Kildare, and we're joined by Brian Rushe. Brian, before we get into the thick of kind of talking about calving season and getting cows out to grass and what cows should be eating, do you want to just give us a bit of a background to the farm here and what kind of system you try to run?
Yeah, so as I said, we're in Derrinturn, which is the northwest corner of Kildare. We're milking, we're a spring calving herd, and we're milking, actually we've got two blocks. So at the minute we're actually just milking on the home block, which is Derrinturn, because we calve all our cows in Derrinturn. And this, I suppose the system, like it's spring calving, simple, try to keep it as simple as possible. We're feeding about a ton of meal. And we're looking, last year we did about 450 kilos of milk solid, so obviously we're trying to improve on that to get 500, the magic number. But predominantly crossbred herd, Kiwi cross genetics throughout, so our percentages are quite good. Yeah. And I suppose in the last, looking maybe at a bit more volume, do we need to inject a bit of that? There are some of the questions I'm asking myself. So.
Okay, yeah, because we're in the cubicle shed here now, Brian, and they're kind of a smaller, kind of a robust looking cow. So just how does that suit your system in terms of, kind of getting cows out to grass and grazing and trying to pump on those milk solids, I suppose?
Yeah, well, I suppose the number one thing is I need a cow that'll walk, because one of the farms have quite a long walk on it. So I need a cow that'll walk, and I need a cow that'll go and calf, quick, I suppose. Yeah. And the crossbred cow always did that for me. And I suppose, they're my two red lines. I need fertile cows that can walk distances, good udders, good, well conformed, and all that kind of thing. And in fairness, the Kiwi crosses have been doing that for me and will continue to do that for me. It'll always be a part of my breeding strategy. Yeah. We try to get them out as early as possible. So once we get a cow clear of antibiotics or off withdrawals from the dry cow treatment, we'll go out by day anyways. And we're out by day here at the minute because the weather's quite good, even though we're a heavy farm. And the cows are paying me back with it as well. The cows are in good form on the back of it,
Yeah. But look, I suppose before we kind of get into spring grazing and kind of what it takes to get those cows out, I suppose your number is kind of 360, 380. I'm right in saying, yeah. So there's about 130 you keep on this farm, yeah, and then there's a farm out in Johnstown Bridge then as well. So just tell us how you kind of operate the two then.
So we calve everything in this farm, Hugh, Derrinturn, and we've got facilities to calve everything here. So our calf sheds are here, bedded sheds and all that kind of crack, right? And then near the farm we have cubicles and we have a smaller calf shed. So we calve everything in Derrinturn, and then we start moving cows up to Johnstown Bridge, and we're going to start doing that next week. We delay it as much as we can because obviously it splits labour and puts us under that much more pressure. So yeah, we'll calve 380 in total. We've 382 calve. We're going to milk 360. That's our number. So 230 on the other farm, the larger farm, 130 on this farm here in Derrinturn. The two farms are very different. Johnstown Bridge is very dry. It can burn up in the summer, but that means I can get out the grass nearly day and night. Once I go up with some cows up there, we're getting a lot of grass into the diet, plus 4 kilos of meal. Whereas this farm, we can come under a bit more pressure if it gets wet,
Right, yeah. I suppose, so look, obviously cows are calving down. I suppose, when was your kind of planned start of calving? When were cows supposed to be starting to calve down? And how many have calved down to now? And kind of what's the procedure around calving cows, I suppose?
Yeah, so we would have synchronised our heifers. So we synchronised, because our heifers are rare than an outblock, so we can't be looking at them every day. So we synchronised our heifers and give them one shot of conventional semen, so fixed time AI. We use the seeders. Yeah. And they were due to start on the 5th, and they started just before the end of February. Or for the end of January, about the 23rd or 24th, and with no problems really at all. And then the cows kind of start following the beginning of February. So the cows are not meant to start till the 7th. Yeah. So at this stage now, the 13th of February, we have about 126 calved out of 380. Yeah. And And you know, a lot of the first batch of heifers are well out of the way.
Yeah.
And what we'll start seeing is some of the early heifers that got stock bull. They're going to start springing up now. They'll calve in a block as well. But the cows are starting to come in steady.
Okay.
And looking at my figures there only this morning, we'll hit peak calving around the 18th, 19th, or 20th of February, like in terms of numbers.
Yeah.
And we'll be at like we're over 30% calved there now. So
what's kind of your aim then for the end of February or your 6 weeks?
Well, I suppose my median calving date, our median calving date, so half the herd,
Yeah.
at one stage half the herd used to be calved at this stage. It was way too early, and we just ran tight into grass.
Just wasn't matching the grass.
It wasn't, no.
Yeah.
So our median calving date should be around the 21st, 22nd of February. So we'd hope, let's say out of 380 cows, we'd hope to have 180, 190 of them calved by, around the 22nd of February.
Okay, yeah. So it's still a fair,
Very
lump,
compact.
very big herd to deal with at the start of,
Yeah,
or at the end of February, I suppose. And like I see, like the cows have the collars on, and you kind of briefly touched with me on that before. So maybe just how does that help with your kind of compaction and getting them into calf early and getting them right?
Well, I suppose first of all, I'll say to you, one of the main reasons I got the collars was I was doing I was doing 90% of the AI and nearly all the heat detection.
Yeah.
And you cannot do that efficiently on two farms.
Okay.
You cannot be in two. So I tried it for a year, didn't work. We probably slipped.
Yeah.
We did slip. So I looked at the collars and I put in collars. They're an MSD collar. They're working well.
Yeah.
So no tail paint. We just go with the collar.
Yeah.
And literally in the morning, the lads in milking, I'd be in the office. I check the app and I send them a text. Draft those cows for the AM.
Yes.
And then I go and AI them. I'm not under pressure AI and not under pressure trying to see cows. And so what happens if you're doing heat detection and serving cows, like human nature is you get tired.
Yeah,
so you're all guns blazing for the first 3, 4, 5 weeks.
Yeah.
But you get tired and that's the thing, you need a bit of time off, and that's where things are slipping for.
There's no stock bull on the farm either, so yeah, you got.
So we don't use a stock bull with cows, and because of staff here, I suppose that would be a kind of a safety issue as well.
Yeah.
Like for health and safety, and I'm more comfortable not having a stock bull with cows, so we use 100% AI in the cows.
Yeah.
But I suppose the collar's picking up silent heats, and like a cow maybe not calved that long, she would have a very short heat, so the collar was catching them, and I was never catching them with tail pain, because you'd be questioning yourself. So we're definitely seeing more of them, and our interval has tightened since using the collars. That's not to say if you're using tail paint and you're doing plenty of observation you couldn't do the same thing, but I just wasn't in a position to do that.
Yeah, but I suppose when you're dealing with that, the numbers that you're dealing with, I suppose as well, it's harder to keep on top of things as well.
It was, yeah. And listen, they're very good, and like they're good on health, they're good on heat, and they're very good on health.
Yeah.
So it'll pick up a cow with milk fever.
Yeah.
It'll give us a distress call on that. So obviously, if her eating or rumination drops off, it'll give her a call on that. So they're a useful tool. It is literally like having someone watching your cows.
Okay. Yeah.
If you know how to read the data, and so it is literally like
That's simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. So I suppose we'll kind of just touch on calving, because obviously you as you said, you've plenty of cows calved at the minute. So maybe just kind of touch on what kind of procedure is when a cow calves. Is the calf taken away straight away, and what's the kind of procedure for the calf and then the cow to follow?
Yeah, so we go through the cubicles. We go through the dry cows twice a day, morning and afternoon, right? And probably next week when we hit peak, we'll go through 3 times. And they're brought onto a straw shed.
Right.
And they're calved on straw in group pens, right?
Yeah.
And we're watching them the whole time. Well, it's in a high traffic area, so we're passing by it all the time. I suppose it is the more accurate way of saying it.
Yeah.
A calf, once dropped, the calf is given 4 litres of colostrum.
Yeah.
Tagged. Maybe
Straight away, even if it's...
Yeah, every calf is given 4 litres of colostrum. Now, if we come in the morning and there's one that looks fed, we'll feed that. We mightn't tube them, but we want to get that 4 litres of colostrum in there.
Yeah.
Best and sure, because we're vaccinating for using Rotavirus Corona vaccine as well, which is critical.
Yeah.
I wouldn't sleep without giving it.
So you want to get that colostrum in so that calf has that.
4 litres in, tag them, and then we maybe leave them with the cow to let the cow dry off, and we put them into we put them into crates.
Yeah.
For about 3 or 4 days on whole milk, transition milk. And then after 3 or 4 days, they go to our calf shed, which will probably get transition milk for another 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
And then we transfer them onto a calf feeder, onto milk replacer and through a calf feeder. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Very good. And then I suppose for the cow herself, is she brought into the parlour that evening or that morning, or what way does that work? And
so we're milking twice for the first week or 10 days. We milk once a day, so we're only doing it in the mornings.
Yeah.
But now we're milking twice a day, so we do it twice a day. So fresh cows are milked in the morning, milks in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And I suppose Another critical thing for us here is it's hard now to get low K silage, so we're having a bit of problem with milk fever a few years ago. So we took the advice of getting magnesium into water, and then following up with a calcium bolus on third lactation cows and up.
Yeah.
So it allows us to make sure to get that by doing it again in the evening, fresh cows in the evening. We're getting that calcium bolus in plenty of time as well, which is working well.
I see one of your men there. He's putting out a dry cow mineral. What is that, twice a day for the dry cow mineral before calving, or?
No, once a day. So once a day the dry cow mineral put down in the silage, and then once a day we put magnesium in the water troughs as well. So that's it. It's a high spec mineral, I suppose, because we're at a high molybdenum area. Like I suppose there's a lot of chelate minerals in it as well. Again, it's working well. Yeah. There's no reason. It hasn't given me any reason to change that.
Right, 100%. Yeah. I suppose then when cows calve down, their milk is kept for 4 or 5 days, or do you test the milk before going into the bulk tank?
Well, we took a batch earlier on, so before we sent our first tank, because we follow withdrawals. I think we're on a 4-day withdrawal.
Okay.
The 4-day withdrawal, and so we just tested it. We tested a couple of batches. Yeah. So before we sent our first load, we tested it. It was clear, so that means our withdrawals are correct.
Yeah.
And so that's we're fine now. We're selling the milk now as well, so all's good.
Yeah. And I suppose then for the freshly calved cow getting out to grass, then you're running a freshly calved group.
Yeah.
So they'll stay together for those 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
And then out to grass then. So what's the kind of typical diet then at this time of the year?
So cows are, let's say our milking herd, our clear herd, they're on grass by day.
Yeah.
And we're just allocating them an area.
Okay.
And they're grazing it well. And then they're a silage at night, and we're giving them 4 kilos a meal, so 2 kilo feeds a meal in the park.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where we are.
Yeah, I suppose look, as you said before, it's slightly heavier type ground here, so it wouldn't be as good as your Johnstown area, I suppose. No. So just talk us through that in terms of grazing, because I suppose like you always hear, get cows out to grass early, but there is more work involved with it, and especially in the spring calving when a lot's going on. There's cows calving down, and you're looking at maybe getting out slurry and fertiliser as well. So I suppose just how do you manage, from even a labour point of view, allocating grass and strip grazing? Do you do spur roadways or back fencing, or what way does that work, Brian?
We've a load of reels,
and
a good quad bike and plenty of pigtails, and I do most of that myself.
Okay.
So that's critical. So a morning like this morning, there's no excuse not to have cows out for even a couple of hours. Like surely you'll find a dry spot in your farm somewhere. Cows will thank you for it as well.
Yeah.
Like if it's wet, and like I don't know, the weather looking to be a bit wet now for the next couple of days, and they'll be in then. Like we won't force them to graze in wet weather, because we'll end up doing too much harm.
Yeah.
How I manage that, like I spread some of my I spread all my fertiliser. No problem. I've well set up for that. But I get a contractor in for slurry for this time of the year. So, and I suppose the other element is the guys that are working here have very clear roles. And, this time of the year is so important that the roles are clear to them. So I have a girl that works on calves predominantly, looks after cows as well. Yeah. I've got a milker there as well, Dilly, who worked in Saudi, but actually came from Nepal. He's really good. He joined us this year. And I'm a part-time guy as well that kind of digs in wherever we can. So it frees me up then to just make those decisions of grass.
You've two
full-time, part-time. A bit of relief milk, and then later on during the year.
Okay.
But it frees me up to make those decisions on grass. Like,
but this could be good ground now to grow grass, or what way is it?
It is. Like as I said, it's heavy.
Yeah.
Once it gets going, it just steams on ahead. It's high organic matter because we're on the edge of the bog, so it performs well. It's well fit to grow grass. Yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose your opening farm cover then at the start of the year. Have you an idea what that was?
Yeah, about 900.
About 900.
Yeah, which was about 100. You'd like it to be around 1,000, but I suppose we made a mistake here before, Hugh.
Yeah.
We carried too heavy a cover on this farm over.
Yeah.
And we couldn't get out to graze it in a bad spring. Like in a dry spring, you get away with it.
Yeah.
But if you have a wet spring on a heavy farm with a lot of grass, it makes life very difficult. Cows won't graze it, and you end up with a load of stuff rotting in, and it causes more problems than
it's good. Yeah. Okay. And I suppose then you're in terms of getting cows out to grass, then they're out by day, am I right in saying now? When will you start to go out by day and night?
Well, weather allowing, like have a load of heifers in, which tend to get unsettled.
Yeah.
And like they had a lot of them out by night now. They spend half the night on the wire, standing by the wire. But weather permitting, and listen, weather, grass growth, and the amount of grass having the farm permitting. On the Johnstone Bridge farm, I'll probably go day and night straight away.
Yeah.
You know, with the weather. But this farm will keep by day at the minute because cover's a bit lower here. Okay. So we'll just go by day at the minute.
Is that way you kind of work it in the spring? You'd aim for go out on lighter covers first.
Yes.
That's obviously a big thing because obviously these cows might be having a dry matter intake of 13 kgs at the minute.
Around that, even 14.
Yeah. So I suppose it's just managing that from the light covers, you know, because they're not going to go out into a heavy cover. They're only going to do damage and leave half it behind. So you just kind of go out for light covers, is that right?
Yeah, they're on a 500 today, and they're on they're getting what are they getting? They're on about, I think, about 3/4 of a hectare I gave them, right? Yeah. And it's grand, and I have the gap open, and they can come back in as they want. Like I did it, I chanced them yesterday with the gap open, and they pottered in, and they had a well grazed now, and they weren't coming in that early, so they're settled. At the minute, they're doing really well. They're settled into their grazing routine, which is nice. Yeah. But you have to be careful. The big thing I find is when you sink a pile of heifers and you have a pile of heifers calved, if you go out with them without a bunch of cows with them, they just won't settle down. Okay. It's not until I have a good shot of cows going out with my heifers that they tend to...
They kind of show them how to graze nearly,
exactly.
Yes.
Keep them in the paddock.
Yes.
Keep them in the paddock,
exactly. They're not going wandering around.
No.
Yeah. No. So I suppose then, in terms of early nitrogen and early slurry, do you work off... Look, obviously you're saying you've no problem with storage, right? So you have that kind of leeway to kind of go out when you want and when conditions allow. But just talk us through kind of what the protocol is then in early spring for getting out that early nitrogen. Is it going off soil tests, or what way do you work it? Or low P&K paddocks, are they getting targeted, or?
I suppose on slurry, sure, you target slurry and low P&K paddocks, right? Yeah. I suppose the farm in Johnstone Bridge, because it's sandier, it's lower in organic matter, and it's been very difficult to build up P&K indexes.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen with it.
Yeah.
So we can spread slurry. You know, we just target the entire farm with slurry. It's more watery slurry there as well.
Okay.
We would go when we can. I have enough storage to get me to the middle of February, right?
Yeah.
And which is nice to have now. So I went out with slurry on Johnstone Bridge last week, with about 2,000 gallons per acre, covered the whole farm, layer covers. It's grand. It's watery. It was watery slurry.
Yeah.
Haven't spread much here yet. In terms of nitrogen, then I'll hold off on nitrogen until the end of February.
Okay.
I probably will. If I get me slurry out, I'll hold on. Now listen, if next week blows up dry and whatever, but it is a bit cold at the minute.
And then will you? The paddocks that haven't got slurry will get targeted with...
Yeah, but
nitrogen. Yeah. And would it be protected urea, or what are you kind of using?
Protected urea and sulphur. First round no sulphur, but after I keep a bit of sulphur out with the nitrogen.
And obviously you were saying you've no pea allowance, so you can't get out your...
No pea allowance. No pea allowance. Spread a bit of K. We spread a bit of K in the back end, depending on soil samples. We find ourselves doing a bit of that every year now.
Yeah.
Just targeting those few fields, maybe heavier silage fields for silage ground, I suppose, more than anything else for K. Like the other thing we did last year was, for the first time, because I have outblocks rented for silage and heifers.
Yeah.
And what I did was I actually got a contractor with lorries to move slurry to an outblock. So my contractor had a nurse tank and an umbilical, and then we had lorries drawn slurry to them to keep them going.
Yeah.
And probably something as an experiment, Hugh, more than anything else, to kind of see how it'll work, because I think it's going to come down the track. There's going to be more of a focus on where the slurry's going, and it worked out well.
Okay.
It worked out well. There was no one standing around idle.
Yeah.
They moved a lot of slurry in a day. We got a lot of ground covered in a day, and it was spread in the right place. So I wouldn't be afraid to do it again. Listen,
happy days,
listen. Bottom line, if you had to go and buy the P&K in a bag, it'd still be cheaper. But the bottom line is, I had slurry and I needed a spread, and it was sent to the right place, which is only a positive, you know.
Yeah, you have to make do with what you have as well, I suppose.
Yeah.
In terms of what you kind of plan in the future, right? Is it, you were saying you used a few NCBC straws last year?
Yeah.
Is it to build up put a bit more size in the herd, or what are you kind of thinking? Is there more investment to go into the farm, or what's the kind of plan for the future, Brian?
Well, in terms of small, I suppose capital, because I started in 2013, so the past 13 years I suppose now has been, we've spent a lot of money, a lot of money going in. So I suppose the last couple of years I'm kind of seeing that light at the end of the tunnel, where I'm not having to make any massive capital investments. Some improvements to be done around the place. maybe look at a silage pit. I have a slatted shed up there, probably put mats on it. So not massive stuff. So in terms of capital, that's it. Like there's an ongoing cost in maintaining roads and fencing, etc., pasture rejuvenation and all that, which is good investments. So in terms of big capital projects, nothing in the pipeline, thank God, unless there's another regulatory change that frightens us. Yeah. But in terms of the breeding, anyways, I'm happy with my cow. I'm happy with my solids. I do about 450 kilos. I did 450 last year. I suppose you're always looking for that bit more, looking for the 500. But I feel my cows are performing well. There's some smaller cows in it that maybe just wouldn't have the capacity to do volume. Okay. But I've put Norwegian red into the herd, which I like. I used some more black and white last year. There's a lot of LIC and Kiwi cross blood in the herd, which I'm going to use again this year as well. Yeah. So I suppose, listen, I'm looking at components.
Keep going the way you're going is kind of what you're saying. I suppose in terms of grass, then you aim to reseed every year, is it, or every few years?
Just depending on paddock performance. I suppose I take that view. Fertility, paddock performance. Yeah. And you take a decision then in the early part of the year, Yeah. So I have maybe 10 acres earmarked to reseed. I've done a lot of reseeding on out farms for silage. Yeah. So the last couple of years, so I'm not too bad at the minute. But it's funny, when I started in 2013, I reseeded an entire farm, and I would say I'm going to have to go back now and start looking at putting more reseeding into that farm now, because more wheat and I'd say there's less of the original grass in it now than there was, and that's just from grazing pressure. And
of course. Look, Brian, we'll leave it there. Look, I just want to thank you very much for coming on to the podcast, and best of luck now for the rest of the calving season, and hopefully everything goes well and everyone stays safe throughout. Absolutely, Hugh. Thanks very much for taking the time. So that's all for this week's episode of The Dairy Trail. I'd like to thank Brian Rushe for giving up his precious time during all the madness at this time of the year. And we want to wish him the best of luck for the rest of the season. And if you are a farmer and you're listening to this podcast, you can contact us if you want to feature. And if you enjoyed the podcast, don't forget to rate and review or share the podcast with a friend or a fellow farmer. Thanks very much for listening.